Hey guys, what's going on? So today I'm going to give you guys a list of my top 10 favorite war metal albums. Now, I know a lot of people have like a lot of preconceived notions about this genre and think, oh, it's all just bands who want to sound like Blasphemy with black, red, and white album covers, and a lot of it is like boring as fuck and all sounds the same, which to a certain extent is true, but there's a lot of stuff in this genre that's not talked about that isn't blasphemy worship, and a good chunk of this list is classics, but another handful of albums on this list are albums that no one talks about or very few people talk about, especially on like metal YouTube. Uh, so I kind of wanted to like shed more light on shit that actually deserves to be talked about versus another list of the same albums over and over. But like I said, there will be some obvious classics in here just because they happen to be my personal favorites. And again, this is my own list of my favorites. So if you're mad that I didn't have, I don't know, like Archgoat or Proclamation on this list or something, make your own fucking list. You know the deal. Before we get into the actual list, I do want to mention a few honorable mentions that just didn't quite make the list, but I still felt were worth mentioning. Goat Penis with Biochem Terrorism. Beharit with Drawing Down the Moon. Fucking classic, like almost made the list, but I didn't want this to be the most basic fucking list ever. And Ouroboros with Spirit Destiny. Okay, so now into the actual list. Number 10, we've got Abysmal Lord with Disciples of the Inferno. I think this is the only album I have on this list that came out after the year 2010, or past like the mid-2000s. This came out in 2015. If you don't know Abysmal Lord, they do play a pretty meat and potato style of war metal, but they do it much better than almost any band has in the past few decades or so. They take like a very Proclamation kind of stripped down sound of like tremolo picked power chords, and just super, really simple, like kind of mid-pace blasting on the drums and just super throaty, like vomitous sounding vocals. But they add breakdowns, and not in the way that you think when you hear the word breakdown. It's not like some cheesy punch the floor homeboy fucking metalcore chuggy shit. They're more like these groovy kind of Celtic Frost sounding sections, but they use those to break up all the intensity built up by all the blasting and like shreddy Blasphemy-esque guitar solos. And that's like really a highlight of this band for me. This is for sure their best release, and I don't think anyone would really disagree on that. This is their debut full length. I can't remember if I already said that or not, but there's not much else I can really say about this. I love how stripped down the production is on this record as well. There's not a lot of bass in it, but it really lets the guitar tone shine, which I love the guitar tone on here. The vocals, again, are just super fucking disgusting sounding. This album actually does feel evil in a very old school extreme metal kind of way, which is refreshing, of course, for a newer war metal band. It's not as like cleanly produced as you would expect from a lot of other bands, but it's not quite like a noisy type of war metal record either. It's just some good, stripped down, dirty extreme metal. Coming in at number 9, we have one of the most like unhinged, if not probably the most unhinged album on this list, and possibly even in this entire genre. We got Lust with Genesis of a Satanic Race. So Lust was a very strange war metal project from Edmonton, Canada, from I believe the late 90s up until the mid 2000s. This is their sophomore release from 2005. The best way I could describe this record to you if you haven't heard it is take a band like Sadistic Execution, who's like a really weird, neurotic, all over the place, really almost sloppy kind of band, and mix it with like the vocal insanity of something like Bethlehem's Dictius de Necaire, and just make it more like satanic and evil and just fucking demented and schizophrenic. And that's how you get this album. Musically, this album is fucking insane. It's like very shreddy and weird and off kilter. There's a lot of weird noodly high guitar stuff that's very technical, but still has a very sloppy, like human feel to it. The drums are very just frantic and confusing sounding almost. This album sounds like fucking noise in like the best way possible. And I don't mean that in like a, oh, it has raw production. Like the production is for sure like stripped down. But this album is just insanely chaotic, and you cannot talk about this album without talking about Bernard's vocals. he does not have typical death or black metal vocals, even compared to something like Silencer or Bethlehem. They're in a similar register of like high-pitched wails, but they're like fucking weird, and just it sounds like he's just having a schizophrenic fucking meltdown over these like insanely technical, weird, shreddy, again, schizophrenic sounding instrumentals. And this album is like as intense as it is confusing, and this is an album you for sure have to be in the right mood to listen to, because it's much different than all the other stuff on this list. It's not as like militant and like tough guy sounding. This album is just like fucked up and scary and weird, and I can't use any other word to describe this album other than schizophrenic. And I think it's one of the most underrated bands in the genre. I mean, if you look at their other album cover for their debut, it's the main guy behind this band standing naked in a river with a shotgun in his mouth. And that tells you everything you fucking need to know about the aesthetic and sound of this band. It's just absolute fucking insanity. So number 9 is Lust with Genesis of a Satanic Race. Coming in next at number 8, we've got an obvious classic I'm wearing the shirt of right now, Revenge with Triumph, Genocide, Antichrist from 2003. So this is actually not my favorite Jay Reed project. However, this album fucking rules. And I know Revenge gets a lot of shit for, all their albums sound the same, you can't hear the riffs, and it's not memorable. This album, I would tell any of those people who say that to listen to, because every song on here is like actually catchy and memorable. Revenge evolved out, or was born out of, other projects that, fell apart and disbanded before, that we'll talk about later on in this list. But Revenge took the sound that Jay Reed had established with his previous work and kind of refined it and made actual catchy songs out of it. Yes, you can't hear the riffs, but that's kind of the point. They're more meant to fill out like a frequency over just Jay Reed going crazy on the drums and vocals. It's meant to be more rhythmic than it is like melodic or like hook laden, but there are catchy hooks in like the grooves and the vocal patterns. I mean, songs like Blood of My Blood have actual fucking choruses in them, and Pete Helmkamp's vocals are also a nice touch when they land in here and there, giving like some variety to the vocals, which is something I love about Revenge. Is you've got Jay Reed's regular, really high-pitched, like bird-sounding vocals. You have Pete Helmkamp's vocals, which are like instantly recognizable and have this almost kind of like narrative sort of feeling to the way he like just enunciates things. And then you have like the crazy, like gore grindy sounding pitch shifted vocals too. And this album is like disgusting, but it's very like strong and like militant and like almost kind of martial sounding. I really like that about Revenge. It just has this really serious, gritty sort of vibe to it. And it's like as catchy as it is intense. Like this whole record has moments that honestly I feel like later Revenge albums kind of lack on, where the songs are actually memorable and catchy and like well thought out. This record is like an essential for a reason, and I think if you're gonna listen to one Revenge record, this is kind of all that you need. I know some people will say Attack Blood Revenge, which is a great pick as well. I like the album after this, Victory, Intolerance, Mastery, a lot too, but they kind of start to lose me later into their discography where it all kind of does start to blend together, but they kind of lost the catchiness that this record had, so I had to include this on this list for sure. Coming in at number 7, we have a longtime favorite of mine, Sadistic Execution with We Are Death, Fuck You from 1994. So if you're not aware of who Sadistic Execution is, they were a pretty early extreme metal band. It's come out of Australia, and they play a hybrid of thrash, death, and black metal, like the earliest incarnations of all three of those genres. And funny story behind the album title, it's because they consider themselves to be a death metal band, and I guess they had some sort of beef with like the record label or something, so on the tape when they sent it to the label, they wrote We Are Death, Fuck You, and I guess that just became their album title somehow. I don't know if that was the band or the label's decision, but I've heard that story somewhere. I could have gotten my details wrong, so don't quote me on that. But this album is fucking insanity. I know I was talking about Lust earlier. This band is kind of similar, not to an extreme degree as Lust, but similar in that the songs feel weird and disjointed, and they're like thrashy, but again have this like schizophrenic, weird kind of quality to them, and that's brought by some of the instrumentals as well as especially Rock's vocals. I love his style of just like obscene, like transgressive lyricism. You can't find written lyrics for a lot of these songs anywhere, but in songs like Internal Clock, he just like spouts these like obscenities here and there, and it's so fucking absurd over these catchy fucking intense riffs, and like the drumming on here sounds like something you would hear on like a Revenge record almost at moments, like with the just insane blasting and crazy rhythmic changes here and there. Not to mention Dave Slave is probably like the best bassist in this entire genre with his like super shreddy, long kind of one-liner like bass breaks here and there. I fucking love that aspect of this band sound. The guitar riffs has some really catchy moments as well. If you're gonna listen to one song on this record that's gonna sell this album to you, listen to Internal Clock. I also really find it interesting how like this album almost feels like a compilation, even though it's considered a full length. Like a lot of the songs on here come from different recordings, and it's pretty obvious the production's a little different here and there. But the stretch of like the first 4 to 5 tracks on this record is just like unfucking touchable to me, and this is for sure their best release. I think the Magus, which is their debut, is a little more consistent all the way through, but the heights that this record reaches, I think, are much stronger than anything else in Sadistic Execution's entire discography. And this is a band that's like celebrated, but I don't feel like it's enough credit when it comes to this genre, and I had to include them on this list. So we got Sadistic Execution with We Are Death, Fuck You. You already know, there's not much I could say about this record that hasn't been said a fucking billion times already. And this is like the flagship album for this entire genre that Nuclear War Now represses a million fucking times. But it still makes my list on the merit that it's a fan-fucking-tastic album. I mean, it's as celebrated as it is for a reason, and it's as influential as it is for a reason. But what bands get wrong about copying Blasphemy is that Blasphemy had little pauses and breaks and like grooves and changes in their songs that made them actually interesting and catchy. They would go into like some chuggy parts, or they would like pause and then go to like a thrashy part. Guitar solos hit at like just the right time. Like I feel like a lot of bands' sort of impersonations of Blasphemy feel very reductive of their actual sound. Because the songs on here are very chaotic, even for most like death metal that was coming out at the time. This is like one of the most extreme records that was out at the time, and it influenced almost everything, if not everything, that came after in this genre. There's not much else I could say that hasn't been said already, but this is obviously an essential fucking record, and it's just an absolute like burst of adrenaline to listen to. Like this album makes you want to get up and go when you actually listen to it. And I fucking love that about it. I mean, every aspect of this, the vocals, the way the guitars, you can barely hear what's going on, but they just sound like this like disgusting, like flat, like frequency that rings over these like sloppy, blasty, super aggressive sounding drums. This album is just fucking disgusting sounding and fun to fucking listen to. And I know like it's been talked about to death, but I had to put it at my list. So number 6, we've got Blasphemy with Fallen Angel of Doom. Now, I know it'll piss a lot of people off that I'm putting, like, any of these bands above Blasphemy besides maybe my number 1. But number 5, we've got Noctibliss with Apocryphal Progenitors of Mankind's Tribulation. Now, I know this is considered more of a compilation than a full-length, but it, to me, at least feels almost like a full-length because it's just 2 demos stuck together to make an album. Now, if you're not familiar with Noctibliss, they're a war metal / noise band from El Paso, Texas. I believe formed either in the late 90s or early 2000s. And this is like one of the first examples of like the war noise sound that would later get more popularized by bands like Tetragrammicide and Conflict and Intoletarian and bands like that. This band was doing it like about a decade earlier. And this album is just, it's so hard to get into, but once it clicks, and you realize, like with a lot of the other albums on this list, this album has actual songs, like songs like Bioterroristic, Holocaust 666. You can't make out the fucking riffs because the production is like a recording on your iPhone would sound better than this, right? But the vocals, I love the way the highs like clip over the instrumental and are just like ear piercing, and it sounds so like hellish and like frightening, and like this sounds more necro than like any other like traditional black metal album I could fucking think of. And the way the vocals, you can kind of understand some of like the actual lyrics, and there's like actual choruses to, like I just mentioned, songs like Bioterroristic, Holocaust 666. Bioterroristic Holocaust from hell. Antichrist will rise and conquer. Be still, from hell. Another example of that is also in the song Satanic Warfare. This band's aesthetic is like really fucking crazy, and I really like the production aesthetic of this, especially like it feels dirty, and like the first time I heard this I like didn't really know what to make of it, but I wanted to like it because it just seemed so interesting to me. And after a few more listens it started to click with me, and just every time I listen to this, because of the production quality of course, like I notice new things here and there. Noctoblis feels like a more interesting and noisy version of what like a band like Revenge did around the same time period. Of it's like super fucking chaotic extreme like war metal, influenced by like the classics like Blasphemy and shit, but they have catchy songs with choruses without sacrificing any like intensity or anything like that. This is like one of the most fucking extreme things in this entire genre. And I really do love the niche that this band really influenced with of like war noise, with like bands I mentioned earlier, and like Meth Goat and Human Agony and like stuff like that. This is just like a super fun album to listen to. It's like one of the most like truly evil and like satanic sounding things on this actual fucking list. Like more than, again, most black metal, this is like some of the actual most like evil, depraved sounding shit you'll hear. And I can't speak higher of it from a musical standpoint. Noctoblis, for sure one of my favorite bands in the genre. So yeah, Apocryphal Progenitors of Mankind's Tribulation. Album title's a fucking mouthful. Next up at number 4, we have a really obvious popular band, and this is like a classic album, Black Witchery with Upheaval of Satanic Might. It's their sophomore full-length released in 2005. For me, this record stands head and shoulders above all the other Black Witchery full-lengths, which those are great too. But this one has dirtier sounding production and feels more evil than their other stuff. What I love about Black Witchery's sound is like, well, people I feel like write them off as, oh, they're like a Blasphemy wannabe type of band because it's like black, red, and white album art and the songs are really simple, right? But to me, Black Witchery's sound feels more like if you took a band like Vaughn and you took more like death metal, like more musically, like musicians with higher level of skill, and you ask them to play Vaughn. This is like the most like extreme version of Vaughn, pretty much. Like Black Witchery feels more like an actual fucking black metal band, but with the template and like aesthetic of war metal. Like they have disgusting vocals and the guitars are down-tuned, but the songs are about like 2 to 3 riffs each, and they're like mostly blast beats all the way through. I can't think of many grooves that ring on this album. The riffs are very like retardedly fucking simple, but they're really catchy at the same time, and there's a lot of moments where despite the songs being repetitive, they're able to carry like a lot of actual energy and like aggression onto this release. And I do think that this album to an extent is hard carried by the production, but I love that about this though, because the production on here feels kind of like a demo. It's a little rough around the edges, especially the first time you hear it. I remember the first time I heard this in high school, I heard this album first from them, and I was like just discovering what black metal even fucking was, so this was like too much for me. And then I heard their other albums and liked those like instantly, and then I came back to this one and it grew on me. I realized like this is their best fucking release. This one feels, again, actually satanic and like scary. If you put this on in your room and you just crank it on your stereo, like it feels like you're like conjuring something up almost in like the most corny way possible. But I love that about this. It's fucking fun to listen to. They get the aesthetic of it right. I love the artwork on this album and this band's whole aesthetic. While it is like the typical war metal kind of thing, I love that about this band, and they do it better than most of the bands in the genre, I feel. It's just super fucking heavy. The instrumentals are simple but also impenetrable at the same time. And overall, like, it's a very nice and concise piece of work too. I like how short this album is. I think it's like under half an hour. It's like around 25 minutes or so, minus a bonus track, which is a Blasphemy cover, which I believe was on Desecration of the Holy Kingdom, their first album. So I don't know why on my CD copy that's on it, but it's a bonus track. But regardless, yeah, this is like another one of my absolute favorites that had to be in the top 5 just because of how frequently I listen to it. So Black Witchery with Upheaval of Satanic Might. Coming in next at number 3, we have one of the most underrated bands in all of extreme metal, Axis of Advance with The List. This came out in 2002, and it's their sophomore album. These guys used to have another band under a different name. Never fucking heard of them. I don't know. Whatever. This is their sophomore album, and I think it's their most concise work. They have 3 albums, and all of them are equally as fucking good, but this one's just my personal favorite, honestly. Most people know who Axis of Advance is or have heard of them because they have Jay Reed on drums, but this is much different from Jay Reed's other work because it's melodic. This band plays a style of war metal that is technical and melodic at the same time, and is fucking awesome. Like, it's like if you took Revenge, but you added elements of, like, melodic death metal and, like, almost power metal, like, heavy metal type of melodicism into it. So you get these actual fucking songs without sacrificing any of the extremity in any way whatsoever. You still get the crazy fucking drum rolls that you would get from Jay Reed. But it's interesting because there's, like, actual riffs on here. You get a drum performance from Jay Reed that's, like, some of his most extreme, but also some of his most controlled at the same time. It's, like, very precise and technical. I really like Vermin's vocals on here. They always reminded me a lot of, like, Sodom's vocals for whatever reason. And there's just a lot of interesting melodic moments on here juxtaposed with, like, the rhythmic intensity brought by Jay Reed that makes this both, like, yeah, it's an adrenaline rush to listen to, like any of the other albums on this list, but, but it's, like, it feels, like, progressive almost in a way while still staying true to the genre. Like, if you're a fan of war metal, you're not going to hear this band and be like, oh, this, like, fucking sucks because it's melodic. Like, they don't sacrifice any level of intensity. Every song on here fucking rules. I could make a whole video talking about this band, honestly, and there's, like, so much I want to say about this album, but I don't want to make this video, like, insanely fucking long. But I'll just show, like, an excerpt from one of the songs so you know what I'm talking about with how, like, interesting and unique this band's sound is. And furthermore, something I like about Axis of Advance is they aren't particularly, like, an evil or, like, satanic or sketchy band or anything like that. That doesn't really carry their sound. Like, it's not, like, the most, like, inherently negative metal there is. It kind of harkens back to, like, when metal music was, like, just about fucking kick-ass songs that make you feel cool. Like, this album makes you feel fucking badass when you listen to it, and that's something I fucking love about everything that this group of musicians in particular has fucking done with their work. More on that next on this list. So, before Axis of Advance had Jay Reed on drums, they had a different drummer and a different band name, and they went under the name Sacramentary Abolishment. And my number 2 spot on this list is their debut album from 1996, River of Corticone. Now, this was an album that, like, changed so much for me. When I first heard this, like, it made me so much more interested in the generative potential that this genre has. So Sacramentary Abolishment differs from Axis of Advance in that there's more elements of doom metal, like particularly funeral doom, and it's a lot heavier on the death metal side. Like, this doesn't sound like Blasphemy, like, whatsoever, but you could still call it war metal for sure, especially because of what other projects are associated with this, and you know what kind of sound they were going for. It's blackened death metal. The production on this has so much low end, and I fucking love that about this. This band knows how to, like, have certain rhythmic changes hit at just the right moment. I mean, the first song on this record is just a fucking masterpiece. It starts out super fucking, like, jagged and, like, aggressive and fast and, like, just in your fucking face, and then it gets doomy as, like, a breakdown-y kind of part at the end. And there's, like, straight up doom metal songs on this album here and there, and they break things up really interestingly. It's a long album, but it doesn't get boring ever. The drumming on here I fucking love. It's very different from what you would get with the Axis of Advanced stuff with Jay Reed on drums. The drumming on here is equally as intense, but it's not quite as repetitive. He does a lot more unique and interesting fills rather than doing, I mean, no shade at Jay Reed. I love his instantly recognizable style of, like, rolls and stuff constantly. But on this, you get more kind of jagged and weird drum fills that, like, catapult each part of the songs into the next in such an interesting way. And again, listening to this album, like, I could be in, like, the worst mood ever, and just feel lazy and fucking exhausted. But this record always makes me want to just, like, get up and go and do whatever the fuck I gotta do. I can't stop now, the wind has turned into fire. There's so much soul to this record, and God, I wish that people who write off this genre would just fucking listen to this, because, well, maybe I don't, because this shit should probably be gatekept and I shouldn't be making a video about it, but this album, like, does for me what so few albums in this genre do for me. It's like a surge of adrenaline, but it's like high quality, like, metal with actual songs and so much thought put into it. Again, I could make a whole fucking video on this band, but there's already some other content that exists about this band, but still they're underrated. Another incredible aspect of this band is the lyrics. This is a concept album, as were a lot of the other Sacramental Abolishment release and the Axis of Advanced stuff, and I think they follow all, like, the same storyline. But just read the lyrics for yourself. They're fucking fascinating and just really cool, and tell this kind of really dark fantasy sort of story. What have I done? What have I done is not great. Like the night, watching me. I smile on the wretched face. This album feels, like, dark and evil, but not in, like, a satanic, typical Black Death sort of way. It feels, like, sinister when they hit all the doomy parts, and that makes all of the heavy parts, like, land even harder. But not in the way that you would expect. You would feel like, okay, they're gonna hit, like, a heavy, slow part, and then the fast parts are gonna feel random. Like, they kind of startle you with stuff here and there, but it sounds, like, perfectly intentional. And again, the riffs on here are great too. There's some interesting, like, pinch harmonic stuff going on. And actual hooks again, and this album feels more down-tuned than what they would do with the other stuff with this band and Axis of Advance, but I actually like that about this. Again, like I said, there's a lot of low end to this record, and I don't know what else I could really say about it if I want to stop this video from being super long, but I can't show this album enough. So Sacramental Abolishment with River of Coricone. I know a lot of people like their sophomore more Distracting Stone, which that one's great too, but this one stands out to me more as the first one I heard, and it's an album that I hold very close to me just because of, like, how it sort of changed the way I could see, like, what this type of extreme metal could really do. Now, my number one spot on this list is an obvious classic in the genre, but I feel like this one actually deserves every accolade that it receives, because this is, like, a landmark of, like, extremity in music in general. My number one spot on this list is Conqueror with War Cult Supremacy. And for me, I don't know what it is, but this album just does not fucking get old. Like, this has been a weekly listen for me, like, for the past, like, year and a half. And I've been listening to this album since high school, but again, because I've had like a greater interest in this genre for the past like a little over a year. I don't know. This album just like really does it for me, and I feel like every other like typical war metal album is just me like chasing the dragon of what this album does for me. So Conqueror was Jay Reed's like, it was the precursor to Revenge, and I know people say, oh, it's the same band, and on the surface it may seem like that, but it's not. Conqueror is much more focused on constant blasting, and Conqueror feels so much more visceral than what Revenge would do. I feel like Revenge was Jay Reed trying to recreate this, and it's good, but it feels more real on this record. I'm gonna say it right now, this might be the angriest fucking metal album ever made. Sure, there's stuff that's heavier and more extreme and faster and more disgusting, but there's something about the just visceral, like, insanity on this album. Like, I don't know if they were on anything when they made this, but this album sounds coked out. Like, it's just, every time I listen to this, it doesn't matter what kind of mood I'm in, how much fucking sleep I'm running on. Like, this album makes me want to get up and go. Like, the whole, like, oh, listening to war metal at the gym, haha, shit, like, is real with this album. This will give you an adrenaline surge. Something I want to say about this album musically is, like, a lot of people will say Revenge and Conqueror are just like, oh, it's just a grind band, you know, with, like, a metal sort of aesthetic. And to an extent, that may be true. But I think there's more traces of actual extreme metal with Conqueror than with Revenge, especially with the vocals. There's like the Slayer Angel of Death like falsetto screams on this record here and there, and I fucking love that. And they break into, again, like some Slayer sounding kind of grooves with like the ride cymbal that are really catchy. They don't do breakdowns as much as Revenge, but when they do, they fucking land. Jay Reed's vocal performance is so unhinged on here. And yeah, he did something similar with Revenge, but on here it feels like he's just putting every like ounce of like actual like aggression and energy in his body into every scream he gives on this record, to where like there's parts where his voice sounds like tired, but he's still just going for it. And it's so sick. There's moments on this record where his voice sounds almost kind of like muffled because of how, I can't tell if he's like cupping the mic or if it's just how hard he's going, but it's like they're just so like snarly sounding. Drumming on this record also, I feel like, stands out from anything else he's done. While it's a little more repetitive than other stuff he's done, it feels, again, more visceral, especially when he hits like those traditional black metal blasts. Every single snare hit lands like insanely fucking hard, and again, it feels like he's putting like his full body into it. The drum fills land at all the perfect spots. Whenever he hits a groove, it just lands perfectly. Now, as for the actual guitar work from Ryan Forster, who of course later went into being Blasphemy, I feel like if you listen closely, there is actual intention behind the riffs. It can be interpreted as, like with Revenge, oh, it's like a kind of wall of noise to carry like what is being kind of perpetrated by like the drums and vocals, and it's the focus on this album is for sure more rhythmic, but you could hear some kind of almost hooks in some of the riffs here and there that are like insanely subtle. I also love the production on this record. It's very bright sounding, and the guitars sound very like scooped and like sharp, which I just fucking, I don't know, it sounds less muddy than other war metal and more like bright and like pointy. That's like the kind of sensation it brings to mind. Every song on this album just like kicks fucking ass, but my favorite song on this record for sure is the last one, Dominator Invictus. There's this really catchy groove where Jay Reed hits like just these insane vocals, like this album sounds angry, not in a way as it's like striking up at something, but more in like a Nietzsche-esque like striking down at like mediocrity and like, you know, the weak or whatever. Like this album actually feels like empowered and like evil, but in the most like maniacal fucking way. There hasn't been a single time I've listened to this record where it didn't get like a physical reaction out of me, where it like makes you want to get up and go, like I've said about a lot of other albums on this list. There's not enough praise I can give this album. I know it's like an obvious classic, but I feel like there's a certain quality to this album that almost every other album in the genre doesn't really meet. I think Fallen Angel of Doom is similar and comes close, but with this album, it feels just, it has that extra pinch of just like actual like anger in the music, I feel. And yeah, I fucking love this album. I can't say enough good things about it, so that had to be my number one for sure as far as war metal goes. So Conqueror with War Cult Supremacy, that is like, if I could only listen to one record from this genre for the rest of my life, it would be this one. But yeah, that's it for this list though. Let me know what some of you guys' favorites are in the genre or whatever. I hope you guys enjoyed though. I hope you maybe discovered something cool out of this list, or maybe give some new perspective on some of the obvious fucking classics that we all know and love from the genre. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.